Welcome to the Indianapolis Convention Center for the NFL Scouting Combine. It's Lettermen Row's coverage of the Scouting Combine. That's Andy Backstrom. I'm Spencer Holbrook here, and 3 of the 8 Ohio State Buckeyes now complete with the interview process. Going to work out tomorrow, and day 1 of the Combine is in the books, Andy. Tommy Eichenberg, Steel Chambers, the linebackers take center stage. Oh, by the way, one of the risers of the draft so far, Mike Hall, also clear in the focus here in Indy on day 1 at the Convention Center. What were your takeaways?
Well, we got to see the two brothers, if you will. They're not brothers by blood, I guess, but Steel Chambers and Tommy Eichenberg obviously have been longtime friends now for a while. Roommates here at the Combine, roommates back at Ohio State, and clearly they talked about how important it's been for them to be together in this process, and they talked about what it means to be here. For Tommy Eichenberg, he was open and reflective about the way the season ended, having a dislocated elbow and fighting through that injury to play against Michigan, not having his best game against Michigan, trying to move forward from that. And then Steel Chambers was his normal self. A little bit of weirdness here and there, a little bit of fun here and there, but ultimately trying to put his best foot forward here at the NFL Combine.
Yeah, Steel was Steel. He asked a random reporter, picked him out of the patch of us, and told him to name the 4 animals he would take into a battle against Steel Chambers and his 4 animals. That's a common thing that Steel has done. He said he did it in an interview with the Steelers. Bold strategy. But if you're going to do it with one team, I guess you could do it with the Steelers, the player-driven organization. I thought that was hilarious, though. And it just kind of showed the personality that Steel has. And then we got a more, like you said, open, maybe a more chatty Tommy Eichenberg than we've ever seen before. Kind of peeled back a little bit of the onion on who Tommy is. Not the bitter guy that maybe everybody kind of thinks of him as, just like he's usually quiet. He usually doesn't have much to say. Jim Knowles said he grunts more than he talks. No, Tommy was pretty talkative today, willing to talk about other people, hated talking about himself, but I thought it was interesting that he was way more open in this setting than he is on the turf at the Woody Hayes Athletic Center where we talked to him midweek during the season.
Well, I think that's really who Tommy is. Like, he will open up at times, and I think Steel Chambers has talked about that. Case Stover's talked about that. Other people on the team have talked about that. It's just that when we've had time with him during the season, he has just been tighter-lipped, and I get that. Business is to be handled, I guess, during the season. Now it's a different stage. He's going on to a pro career, and maybe that played a part in this too, to be able to reflect, look back at his time at Ohio State, and open up a little bit. And I think when he does, it shows just how much he loves the game, shows how much he loves Ohio State. He played through a lot, not only this season, but also last season with the 2 broken hands. Tommy Two Thumbs was the nickname that was popularized. And he could have gone to the NFL draft after that season. He was atop the cup. I think he was 5th or maybe 7th in solo tackles that year. And he had a lot of reasons to just go to the draft then, but he came back for a 5th year, and that was to beat Michigan and to make it to the Big Ten championship. Those big goals this team has had for a long time, and couldn't get those done. And you could just tell the way he talked about that, the weight that he kind of carries with that. A lot of these guys do, but ultimately he's trying to move forward, and he could be a pretty good NFL player. And his brother's in the NFL. He talked about that a little bit as well. His brother Liam, who was an offensive lineman for the Miami Dolphins. Yeah,
it's interesting because then we waited 3 hours with the Mike Hall group, and it was a big group of defensive tackles who just what we didn't think was going to show up. They just waited, tick, 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 just waited and waited. And finally it's like, hey, Mike Hall's here, it's 1:30, and it's time to talk to Mike Hall. And we got a really interesting session with Mike Hall. It talked about motivation, why he left for the NFL when all of his teammates in his recruiting class, other than Marvin Harrison Jr., all came back to Ohio State. He said he made the best decision for Mike Hall. He talked about how he had a son who was born the day before the Western Kentucky game. He wasn't with the team at the Blackwell. Instead, he stayed at the hospital on the little tiny pull-out bed that they've got at the hospital, the birthing center at the hospital. He slept there and then met with the team the next morning. Just an interesting peel back of who Mike Hall is as well. He's motivated for his son. He's motivated by being undersized. He likes the Aaron Donald comparison, but he says he's blessed to be there. Just again, an interesting way for him to frame not only why he's here, but how he got here and what he hopes to do at the next level.
All these guys have to do what's best for them. The 11 guys that came back that were draft eligible, that's a huge story, but this is Mike Hall's story, and I think that there's a special thing in that itself, playing for his son. We see a lot of these guys go to the NFL. They're drafted, they have a kid already, and I think there's something really cool about that. They're already trying to make a mark. for their own family, to be able to provide for them, and to kind of start their own story. And that's what Mike Hall is doing. And such a great talent. I mean, he's been atop the team and pressures generated the last couple of years. He is one of the better pass rushers that's come through at Ohio State, especially on the interior recently. And it's really just been like, what is his ceiling? Because it feels like he's just kind of scratched the surface of what he could be. And now it's going to be, I wouldn't be surprised if he's one of those guys that just has an even better career in the NFL than he did even at Ohio State.
Yeah, his best football may be in front of him. Actually, caught up with Bruce Feldman from The Athletic today, and that's what Bruce said. You know, he's one of those guys. Is his best football ahead of him? Well, the Senior Bowl showed that that very well could be true. And Mike won't get a chance to prove that here this week because he tweaked his hamstring. He said that he's going to be good to go for the NFL, or for the Ohio State Pro Day, there in March. And that's going to be a huge day for him because he is quickly rising up draft boards. You would have liked to see him on the turf at Lucas Oil Stadium this week, continuing that rise, continuing that positive momentum. But the bottom line is, if you're not healthy, then you're kind of hurting yourself more than you are helping yourself on the turf in there. So I could go either way. I think that it's probably best for him if he's not fully healthy. Sit out, make sure you are healthy, and you know, rock and roll at Pro Day. That way, if you show yourself at Pro Day, you keep that positive momentum going to the draft. But he is one of the guys on this floor today here in the interview room at the Indy Convention Center who kind of the talk of the town because he's starting to rise up those draft boards.
Yeah, when you have such a great Senior Bowl too, like he didn't even need to play in that game because of how much he showed in the week leading up as one of the defensive linemen that was recognized for his team during that week in Mobile, Alabama. And when you have that kind of success, there's only so much more you need to show. A lot of that at that point is just measurables and meeting with teams and doing the interview process, which is another big part of this week. These guys talk about teams that they meet with, questions that they have to answer about their personality, about their leadership technique, about their play style, and kind of just their compatibility with guys on the team, locker and stuff like that. So that's a huge part of the process as well. But as you said, we'll see him at Pro Day. Remember, like DeJuan Jones last year, he didn't work out either here, and then did work out, or I guess he didn't even at Pro Day either. Some of these guys say they're going to do it at Pro Day, and then don't end up doing it at Pro Day. So it's always just, sometimes they're here on time, sometimes they're early, sometimes they never show up, sometimes they talk to us 3 hours late.
We only come over here, though. It's not just to talk to the Ohio State players who are moving on, going to the NFL, about them moving on and going to the NFL, but also to get a glimpse at the future. Spring ball starts next week. Tommy Eichenberg, Steel Chambers, talked about the guys you would expect them to talk about, and did so with some glowing praise for Gabe Powers, for Cody Simon, for C.J. Hicks. What's the word I'm looking for? The steam is rising. Like it's percolating right now. This linebacker room loaded with talent.
Yeah. But
like we just keep hearing the buzz. Is the buzz going to be able to match, or is the production going to be able to match the buzz, Andy? Because like we're at a point now. James Laurinaitis is talking profusely about C.J. Hicks finally having a breakout year. He said, I'm a big fan of C.J. Hicks. He's talking about Gabe Powers and how good Gabe Powers can be and how good of a leader Cody Simon can be. But there's not a lot of production there. Like, we heard it again today. Do you think we're going a little too far here, or do you think the praise is warranted?
You know, it's unproven buzz at this point, right?
Yeah,
a lot of these guys, I mean, Cody Simon's really the only one that has starts underneath his belt at this point. C.J. Hicks, we've heard a lot. We haven't seen a lot. Arvell Reese is someone that came along in the summer last year, made an immediate impact, but didn't really play any defensive snaps of note. And then you got Gabe Powers, who again has been kind of one of the practice warriors that earned snaps and special teams. And we've heard a lot about what he could potentially do and how well he knows this defense. But again, we haven't seen him in game. Yeah. So a lot of this is, hey, these are really great guys. They could fit in the system. Tommy Eichenberg even said these are all guys that if they came in last year, if they needed to because of an injury, you wouldn't have batted an eye. You wouldn't see a difference between the defense with them in versus with the Tommy Eichenberg and Steel Chambers in. But again, they're going to go to bat for their guys. That's not surprising. They will say that. The question is, when push comes to shove, can they deliver in the game? And one of those guys might be Sonny Styles. And we've talked about that already on this show. We've written about it at LettermenRow.com. But it was a question that was brought up again today, especially to Tommy Eichenberg. Do you think that Sonny Styles could play linebacker? He said that I think he could have done it last year. I think he was ready for that, which is an interesting thing because that was something that we all talked about last year as a possible spot of where do you put him because he's just so big. But they put him at safety and he ended up being in the nickel for most of last season.
Yeah, we'll talk to Josh Proctor on Thursday, a little preview from LettermenRow.com, watchers here on the YouTube channel. We'll talk to Josh Proctor on Thursday and get a little bit of insight into what he thinks about Sonny Styles, potentially known to linebacker. Maybe we'll have to write about that at LettermenRow.com after hearing from Proc himself. Buckeyes wrapping up day one here. 3 Buckeyes in the books. Tommy Eichenberg, Steel Chambers, and Mike Hall. The future also being talked about, but those guys now on to the NFL for their futures. That's Andy Baxter right there beside me. I'm Spencer Holbrook. Thanks for watching the first day of NFL Combine coverage at LettermenRow.com. We'll see you guys back in here on Thursday. For more coverage, go to LettermenRow.com. $1 for your first month, and we'll see you guys over there.